Well, hello. Today is another Real Estate Jerky Live. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I got a banner there that doesn't need to be there yet because we're not down there asking those questions. Today's guest is Kristy Miller, and she's with Century 21 Wildwood Properties up in Twain Harte. And people are going to say, you've had Twain Harte on a lot. I'm just, I do certain areas and then I go to other areas, and I want people to know there's so many different places you can live down here in the Central Valley that you should try them all out and see where you want to live. I mean, even if you're from the Bay Area and you're commuting, you need to live up in Tuolumne County. It's a nice, quiet place. I talked about it yesterday on some other things. But Kristy, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And today's show was kind of brought to us by Kristy. She actually put out on her live question. Yeah, you asked questions, right? Yeah, it said you needed some questions. What are your top questions?
Yeah, I just asked what questions first-time home buyers have had, or things that other people that have bought their home wish that they had been talked to about or explained about, previously when they were going through the process. And so we got some good questions.
All right. And I named the show the top 10 questions, and then I found there was 11. So we have one extra. No big deal.
Bonus.
Right. That's right. Bonus. Top 10 plus. It just didn't sound the same. Top 11. All right. So, all right. So the first, let's get right into it. Did you have anything else you want to add before we get going?
No.
Okay. All right. First one is, what is the first step? I know my answer. What's your answer?
My answer, I actually had somebody call me the other day and I said, you got to talk to my favorite lender. Getting pre-qualified, finding out how you're paying for said home is always the first step. You don't want to shop for homes you can't afford and fall in love with one.
Yeah. So I put it on the screen. First step, get pre-approved and listen to your agent who they recommend. One of the things that people don't, they think they have somebody from a different area who might not know Tuolumne County, and Tuolumne County is unique. Just like a lot of places in California are unique, and you should have somebody from a local area who knows that area because they run into issues that you don't have elsewhere. You guys have like septics and wells and other stuff that, most people don't know, right? Anything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there's so many caveats of our area that having someone from out of the area or just issues, their timelines that we have, that they'll write these crazy timelines, and it's like, that's not going to happen.
Right. And, and a lot of stuff can get taken care of, and after a while, the same people realize what's going on and how to get around it. But I know this next question I'm going to throw up on the screen is asked all the time from buyers because they don't know how you get compensated. Right.
Yes, all the time. Because you think, I have a good friend that was shopping for houses, and I found that out, and I asked her, I was like, hey, are you using a different agent? She's like, no, I don't think we can afford to use an agent. Nothing comes out of the buyer's pocket. So the seller makes a contract with the listing agent, and the listing agent offers a percentage of the sale out to whoever brings the buyer. So nothing out of pocket as a buyer.
All right. That is correct. But because like you said, the seller actually makes through their contract, they pay both sides of the transaction. That's what's negotiated up front and what they're willing to pay.
Yeah. It comes out of the sale of the home.
Sorry, I did something I don't normally. I hate multiple exclamation points because I don't know how you can yell louder as you possibly can.
I'm a multiple exclamation pointer, so you're good.
All right. So the next one is, now I'm jumping to what I might know, right? We get asked this all the time. You get asked this, what is the best program, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
And I send them straight back towards you. It depends on different people's situations is my answer, but.
Right. And I'm going to start off with one I like the best up where you guys are at. And in certain areas, which is, we'll start with 100% financing, right? So if you're buying, USDA is a great program up in Tuolumne County because you can buy with no money down. The caveat to that is there are income level limits, which they just went up because I was checking, and then there's strict ratios. But the one thing about that program is the fact that you can get in for no money down, right, as a regular person. And the other issue you're going to run into, we won't get into the seller's market and all the stuff, how it's harder to get those accepted, but we'll just talk about the different loan programs. Okay.
Yeah, I had a buyer last year that you helped he called me about a rental, and he gave me his credit and his income. I said, well, why aren't you buying? And he said, "Oh, I don't have a down payment." And we ended up getting him into a home for less than he would have paid out of pocket if he had had to pay a deposit and first month's rent on his rental. His out of pocket was actually less with buying on USDA.
Right. And a lot of times when people look with right now looking at buying and renting, I had somebody on the show and they were talking about, it was actually Allison Daniels, how it's harder to rent and pay. Credit check, all the stuff they want is harder than usually to actually buy a house these days, right? With all the people wanting to rent.
The demand for rentals. I mean, there's a huge demand for buyers as well, but the demand for rentals it's a whole nother subject. It's scary.
All right, so we're talking about right now what loan type is best. We're doing 100% financing. The other 100% financing is the VA loan, which is for veterans and widowers. If they're still getting disability on that, then they can use that too, but it has to be a special type of disability, a DIC, and I can get into that later. If somebody is their person passed away and they have questions about that, just give me a call. It'll be easier than trying to go through this through here. VA loans are up to 1.5 million with zero down. The only issue you possibly could have up in your area would be pest issues, right? So a VA person cannot pay for pest repairs. They can pay for the pest report, but we also can use a short form pest report, which just says there's no active termites and then you're fine. The problem is in this market, it's really difficult to do the VA and the USDA, but eventually it'll come back.
The other thing is that, again, why you want a lender who knows your area. So many lenders don't know that form exists, and they just say, "No, I can't accept it." And I've had to argue with a few and said, "Yeah, you can."
Right. And what it is VA allows the short form. Sorry, I didn't capitalize my C. The short form pest report is a VA thing, not a California. I argue all the time with pest inspectors and certain people who do the pest report that we only need the short form, and they stand on their soapbox about how the California whatever, in each state they'll do this. You just have to find the people who do the short form for the vet. It's all about the vet. It's not about anybody else. All right. All right. So the next program that most people use is the FHA program, right?
Yes.
And it is the go-to program, as it says on the screen, and I don't mean the word weaker to affect somebody, but if you have less than a 700 FICO score, you're probably going FHA. It's going to be the best rate, the best numbers for your payment, all that on this program versus going to conventional. We can look at both scenarios, but it's usually is the best program. It is 3.5% down. The easy calculation for that is that's for every $100,000, that's $3,500. You follow me? So 30, yeah. So if you're buying a $300,000 house, you're looking at about 10 grand, about 10.5 actually. The only other issue with this is it has county limits, and that's based on what you can buy in each county. That changes every year. So the best thing to do is talk to your loan person, and they can explain that to you. And I'm going to get into the FHA appraisers are supposed to appraise it the same way conventional appraisers do.
Really?
Yes. What I mean by that is they're supposed to do the same. So health and safety issues that you would have on conventional should only be the same thing on FHA. Sometimes that some of the older appraisers still appraise it the old way. Are you following me? That's on them. They don't have to call for everything. They only have to call for health and safety issues. FHA appraisers were supposed to do it the same way as conventionals. But, again, we're at the...
I have someone I might call later and let them know that maybe I was wrong. I just said, I don't think this house could go FHA, and maybe it can then.
Well, it just depends. The best thing to do is talk to whoever their lender is that they're going to work with and see if they're going to have an issue for what that is. Because sometimes it's pretty easy. I mean, if you have chipping paint, just go in and covering up the paint or that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So the other minimum down is the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, 3.5%. I'm sorry, 3% down. What am I talking about today? And basically, this is the best program. If you've never owned a home before, so the FHA, you could have owned a home before. It's not for just first-time home buyer. It's for any time. VA is for all the time. USDA, you can't own another house. You run the numbers, and we'll figure that out later. But right now, so if conventional loans with 3% down, that's $3,000 for every 100,000. So on 300,000, it's only $9,000 down. So it's cheaper than the FHA. But you need to have a 700 plus FICO because that is where you get the best rate. because rates, is another whole hour thing we can have on how they figure out rates, which is a risk-based pricing for rates, which means the riskier a loan is, the higher the interest rate is, right? FICO score is a risk if you have a lower than a 700. So somebody who had a 740 FICO score versus a 640 FICO score is said to 17 times more likely to go in foreclosure over the life of that loan.
Wow.
So that's how they figure that stuff out. But with FHA, you're not hit as hard with the different scenarios for risk-based pricing as much as you do conventional. Okay. Fannie and Freddie, that is the conventional programs. They have a loan limit right now. It's $584,250, and like I said, it's best with a middle FICO score of 700. Did you have any questions on any of this?
No. One thing I've noticed is like a lot of people, and I think maybe back in the day, it was always if you did a conventional, it was always 30% down. And now I'm seeing like 10 and 5 on conventional loans, right?
Yeah, 3% is for somebody who hasn't owned a home before in the last 3 years. 5% down is if you owned a home in the last 3 years. You can do 5, 10, you can do 7, you can do 8.5, you can do 10. If you're not going to put 20% down, you have mortgage insurance. And if you have a higher FICO score, I just did one the other day. I was quoting somebody, and for 10% down, their mortgage insurance was like $25 a month. Right. It made more sense for them to save that $30,000 than to go ahead and put down 20%, because for someone to save $30,000 at, we'll just say $100 a month. That's how many months is that? It's like 300 months. So that's almost 30 years. So you're better off keeping that money in case something happens. All right. Now, just 2 more I want to get through, and then we'll get to all the rest of the questions, because everybody's asking about what's the best program. There is a couple other programs. CalHFA, you've heard of CalHFA, right? That's a state program where you can have your down payment covered as a second mortgage. You can have your closing costs included as a third mortgage. The problem with that is the rates are, I don't want to say ugly, but they're not the best rates. Meaning that if I could quote you a 3.5% FHA, you might have a 4.5% for the CalHFA. It's just something you have to go through and run the scenarios and see if it works for you. But for most people in this market, you want to have a down payment, right? Yeah, absolutely. Because of the competition. All right, so the last one and I keep getting asked this all the time, is if I find a house that needs work, is there a renovation loan? Yes, there are renovation loans. There's a few of them. And so it's just a matter of but the problem is how much is the reno needs to be done? What is the reno? And these are things you have to sit down and go through and talk to your lender about. So if you're going to go ahead.
Oh, and the renovation has to be done by licensed contractors, right? You can't do the renovation yourself.
Correct. And that's the same whether you go with the FHA program or you go with the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac program. They all have to have that person that is licensed. Normally, anything you do on a house should be with a licensed contractor. And sometimes when we come out and they ask for something to be done on appraisal, right? FHA, or they say this needs to be done, they want to see that person's licensed.
Right.
All right, so now let's go back to the questions that we're asking. What are the top 10 questions? So this one came up with, what are out-of-pocket costs are there, right?
So there's any
Why don't you talk about the real estate side?
Okay, so there's any inspections you have done on the property. Home inspection, pest inspection, septic up here is huge. Roof, chimney, you could get the corners marked. There's lots of inspections you could do. There's a few handful that we always suggest people do. And those are running, depending on the inspection, between 150, and then septics can be 600 or so. But that's, for your own protection. You want to know what you're buying. Absolutely. And then post or escrow wise, there's your closing costs.
Right. But let's keep with what we're talking about. So we're talking about out of pocket. We'll talk about closing costs because that's one of the other questions.
Okay.
But let's talk about just out of pocket. That means you have to pay them and it doesn't go through escrow.
So your inspections, your appraisal, yes, you pay for. Your loan does not pay for that.
Right. Unless it's VA. That's the only time it's different. Yeah. On VA, we pay for that up front, and then the veteran pays us during the closing.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right. So that's out of pocket. And the other question, is what closing, I'll throw this one in here right now. So closing costs, right? You brought up what closing costs. So we'll just go there. You got escrow fees, title fees, the PMI that you asked, that was private mortgage insurance. You're going to have that on FHA. You're going to have that on conventional when you don't put down 20% down. And we can get into that later. But the most important thing is closing costs. There's closing costs associated with your loan, and you need to speak to your lender about that, what your closing costs are going to be. Because one of the biggest problems I've heard constantly is they find out that whoever they talk to didn't explain that they might have to pay whatever they negotiate with the seller, their 50% of, if it's 50% of, if it's not 100% of closing costs of escrow and title fees, or if they're impounding their loan, which has to do with putting taxes and insurance in their payments so they don't have to come up with it constantly. They have to fund that, and that's other stuff. So this could be another hour show about what closing costs are there, and we can get into that later, or you can send us a private message and we can go through it fully.
Yeah, but typically I'd say if you're getting a loan up here, we do split title and escrow almost all the time. You're looking between 6 and maybe 10,000 closing costs at the close of escrow. So that's something that, a lot of people aren't aware of.
And I'm going to make that cheaper. Basically, if you're impounding your loan right now, we're pulling for about 5 months. And the biggest cost you're going to have is whether it's you get $1,500 a year for insurance or $3,000 for a year for insurance, right? Because that could be $3,000 of your closing costs could be your insurance that you have to set up ahead of time. Then you say you have 5 months of taxes, that could be another $15,000 to $2,000. So just right there is $5,000. And that has nothing to do with your loan costs. Because if you look at your loan costs in the box 1, and this is on your loan estimate, we can explain this later, but there should be no costs in there, no underwriting fees, no processing fees, none of the garbage fees. If you're going with somebody who has all those fees, ask them to waive them, because you don't need them. I'll get off my soapbox. I hate when people pay more than they need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, now I got to get rid of, there you are. All right. So so I jumped ahead to closing costs because we were right there. And one of the things that says, can my loan cover my closing costs? Right. What do you think?
Almost never, unless you have an awesome real estate agent who knows how to write their contract.
Right. Well, that's okay. That's great. But if the loan itself, I think they're asking, and that question would be only on USDA, you can include some closing costs. And then sometimes you can use the interest rate to offset and get a little bit higher interest rate to get some rebate. Ever since the pandemic, it's very difficult to do that because they're afraid you're going to turn around and refinance it 6 months later and take that rate much lower once you did that. So it's much harder than it was prior to the pandemic. So your best way to do this is just think that you need to either save the closing costs, or the next question, it will answer this easier right here. So it asks, can any of my down payment be gifted, right?
Yes, but you have to tell your lender ahead of time.
Right. So yes, it can be your down payment can be gifted, and your closing costs can be gifted, but you need to speak to me or whoever you're dealing with on how do you receive it, because we do not want you to receive it up front. We want you to receive it through escrow, so it's a lot less paperwork for everybody to handle.
And if you throw it on there, you don't tell anyone that's what's happening in the last week of your escrow, all of a sudden you get a gift of money. It slows down everything significantly.
Right. Because, if you're showing that you have the money and that's what we're using, that's saying you're going to bring that in for a down payment, and then all of a sudden other money comes from elsewhere, that's a problem. But if they don't have the money, right, and they're going to get a gift, we should know about that up front. So when we qualify, us as a loan person should be qualifying these people, because we said the first thing they need to do is be pre-approved. And the reason I say pre-approved, pre-qual is easy. You just run credit and they tell me what they make and all that stuff, and you really don't know if that's true. Pre-approved, actually, you run the credit, you get all their documentation to back up the income they say, back up the fact that they have the money for the down payment, so that you can use that to show that, hey, they do have money for the down payment when you actually write the offer. That's pre-approval, and that's what we want. And you can't see houses these days without being pre-qualified or pre-approved to walk in. And if you're going to write an offer, a pre-approval versus a pre-qual, they're going to take the pre-approval over the pre-qual all day long, because they know what that means. Yeah. I hope I'm answering. I don't know if anybody's had some questions. The problem is my button's not been working the last few days on my side. All right. All right. So did I miss any of the ones so far that I had them in order? First up. No,
I don't do things in order, Ed.
I'm sorry. I want to make sure I cover as much as we can in this short period of time. I don't want to keep people on forever. So I already talked about escrow. We already did this one. We did that one. And this is the huge one. Right? That question alone right there is most people don't listen to us. And what I mean by that is we'll send out videos. We'll tell them in emails. We'll tell them personally. And I'm going to say this. Do not go out and get a car during the process. Do not get an inquiry that you're thinking about getting a car during the process, because everything you do there, once you're in contract, we have to show now you have another payment. Maybe you can't qualify. I've had where people, oh, I just bought a car. And it was like a week before closing. I'm like, good thing you can return that, because you have 5 days to return them now. I'm like, just return it, because you can't afford it. If you have it now, just return it. And then once you close, go back there and pick it up, redo it again.
But washer and dryers, people get excited about their new house. They buy appliances, couches on credit.
Right.
I tell everyone, don't do anything without talking to your lender. Don't breathe too hard without talking to your lender between the time we get our offer accepted and we close escrow, because
the other issue that people do is they change jobs, right? That is huge. And they don't tell us. We call to verify employment. Oh, he doesn't work here anymore. She doesn't work here anymore. What? And they were like, oh, we didn't tell you that I was changing jobs. The worst one was if you change a job and then you were making. So the reason this is so important is, say that you work for a company right now and you're hourly and you get commissions, right? And you have a 2-year history of it. You change jobs and they pay you the same way, but you have no history now of that commission. We can't use that commission. You just killed your loan, right? So you need to speak to us ahead of time to say, hey, I had a client recently who said, my husband's just got offered a job at Tesla. Well, I know he's going to be making the same amount or more money. So I'm like, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. We'll work around your refinance, and you go, you do what you got to do. We'll work around it. And we just need the first paycheck as soon as it comes in. So pay stub. All right. We're getting pretty close here to the end. Only a couple more. All right. This one. All right. So when we do, when we look at people's income, right, we look at gross income. That means how much you get in before all your deductions and everything else, right? Or what you put for. So someone asked, should I, oh, this is something totally different, but I just want to make sure that people understand we look at gross, not net. And this one says, should I change my tax withholding on my paycheck after buying a house? Do you know why they're asking this?
Because your taxes are going to change after you buy a house.
It can. However, the current tax environment, you need to talk to your accountant, CPA, all those people, and let's put that down, or EA, whoever you use. But for most people, the reason they don't use the standard deduction for the interest anymore, they use the $12,500 that is the minute that each person gets as a deduction. So the interest isn't written off like it used to be. That's the current tax that we have right now. With the new proposed coming, we have no idea. You might have to start itemizing again, and then you might want to erase your deductions. But wait, talk to your tax person. Don't do anything until you talk to them, because you might raise them, and the next thing you know, you owe money.
Right.
But we used to tell, for 18 years of my life, when we were in this business, they said, yes, now the fact that you're actually bought this house, go to your employer and raise your deductions by 2, so that way you can offset the tax benefit. But that's just, we don't know if that's going to be that way going forward. So let's just wait to see what the change is. I hope not, because I prefer the $12,500 for most people. For if you own rental properties, other things, you prefer the other way.
Okay.
All right. So this is you. This is your last question. All right. And this is the last question. And this is the 11th one. This is it right here. When I make an offer, am I locked into buying that home?
So in the way the contract is written, without us changing anything, you have 17 days to do your inspections, your due diligence. You get all of your reports, septic, pest, home inspection. The sellers fill out 7 pages of yes and no answer questions that tell you everything that they know about the home. You can review all that. And at that time, if you choose to back out before those 17 days, you get your deposit back. You initially put down an earnest money deposit 3% or so of your purchase price. In this market, we're seeing people that are releasing that contingency. And so that's something you have to talk to your agent about and do your research on. But no, you're not. You can make an offer, you can get an escrow, and you can learn about the house. You don't have to walk through it once and then be like, oh yeah, this is good. I don't know what's in the attic or what the foundation looks like, but I want to buy it. So.
Right. Because I mean, a lot of people are releasing the appraisal contingency, meaning that whatever the value comes in on the appraisal, you're going to buy it, even if it's lower than what the contract price is. They're releasing the inspection contingency, which has to do with what's wrong with the house. But some people aren't. One of the things that worry us as lenders when they release the loan contingency, right? Even though we know everything, sometimes things pop up that we have no idea and we'll get around it, but we don't want to put that there. If you release all three of those, you technically you're going to risk your earnest money deposit. So technically you can always get out of the contract, but what you risk is the EMD, your earnest money deposit that you put in. So if you put in an escrow when you write your contract and your agent puts on there, you're going to put $1,500 into escrow to do this, to start this. And the reason there's an earnest money deposit, which most people don't realize, is if you have a contract, you have to have some benefit to go with it to make it a accepted offer, right? So you need that earnest money deposit is what that does. That makes it a valid contract.
Yeah, it's your promise to the seller that you are serious about buying their home and that you do want to try and move forward with it. And if you're asking them to take it off the market for that deposit amount.
Correct. But what I'm getting at is according to contract law, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. When you're writing a real estate contract, it's a contract. So you are now in a contract with the other people, and that's what that earnest money deposit is. And when you get to a certain point and you release it, they can keep it because of that. But that being said, so if you do release all your contingencies, whatever you have on the line in earnest money deposit is what you will lose if you decide to cancel, if you release everything. If you don't and you keep the loan contingency, then you always have an out. But the other thing I want to talk about this question is I had an agent I was talking to, and I asked, I'm just going to say them, so I don't, how did they get their people in the contract so well? She goes, I write multiple offers at the same time. The problem with that is if they accept so if she gets 2 offers accepted, then you have a problem.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
That's an ethics problem if I recall correctly.
It's a problem to begin with. Well, when I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. No, do not explain,
And this
don't tell anybody you do that. Yeah. Huh?
In this market, it's hard because we have people that are waiting. They want to wait a week to review offers. And there's other houses that they're not waiting. So you write one offer and then you see another house come on while they're waiting to review them. And you're like, oh, I would put an offer in on this house too, because we have no idea if we're getting accepted over here. So it's tricky.
And for what I understand, you can do that and you can always withdraw your other offer. You can tell them, hey, you're still waiting to review those. Go ahead and withdraw my offer because we got one accepted.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
It's when you get accepted on two that'd be problematic.
It could be. Right. All right. So that's actually the top 11 questions of what first-time homebuyers ask. And I really appreciate you reaching out to your people and saying, hey, these are questions that I would like to know what people need. And I hope we answered a lot of those questions along the way. And if you have any other questions, you guys want to know anything, these are Real Estate Jerky Live. I do a radio show on the weekend. And this is the extension of that because I can only talk for so long on that show, which some people say, thank goodness. But I can't go real deep with agents or other people I have on because we only have about 18 minutes to talk to them through that whole hour show. And so I'd like to go in depth. Like we've been talking for about 28 minutes and we talked about a bunch of different things and that's important. So that's why we do this. If you guys, we had an escrow and title one of this about 3 weeks ago. And it's a great episode. So why don't you scroll through, find it. And if you need help on finding that one, that explains what escrow and title is and why do you need it. It was a great one done. And I'm not talking about myself, but the other person who was on there explaining that I just appreciate them because I couldn't get anybody else to talk about it. And they were really amazing. So there's that you guys can always go to. And then you can always go to our YouTube channel and check that out. Or you can go to our radio show channel and check out all of our podcasts. Anyway, Kristy, why don't you throw out me your number in case somebody wants to get in touch with you?
Oh, my phone number is 209-768-6112.
You're too fast. 768
6112.
6112.
Born and raised in Tuolumne County. Moved away twice, but ended up coming back. Got my real estate license a couple years ago. I don't know if you saw my post the other day, but I'm number 5 in our office for the year. I never make the monthly things, but I'm on the annual one, so I'm good with that.
That's all that matters. That's all.
Right? That's where I'm at. So, yeah.
And you can always find her on Facebook. You can message her. And do you have an Instagram?
Oh, yeah. Twain Harte Way of Life is my Instagram. I try to do good about putting local events and stuff like that up. Now that events are happening again, I'll have something to post about. So,
all right. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. I didn't tell you I was going to ask this, but why did you get into real estate?
So actually, I went to elementary school with Betsy Hurst, who you have on here quite often. And one day I was working after I had a high stress job at a car dealership, and I quit it, and I went and worked at a pizza place out of frustration, and I couldn't handle the stress anymore. And then Betsy called me one day and said, "Hey, what are you doing for work these days? Here's my broker," and put our broker Kimberly on the phone. She said, do you have some questions about the job position? And I said, "What job position?" You never turn down a job, so you always ask questions. So I ended up working at the Century 21 office as a transaction coordinator, which is basically babysitting the contracts, making sure all the deadlines are hit, that sort of thing. And I was doing a lot of the work and not making a lot of the money, and was like, hey, I want to do this. And so I went and got my license, and for me, it's been great. I can help people. I've always had wonderful customer service and worked really hard, and in regular jobs, you get paid the same amount as the people who aren't working really hard. So for me, I was done with that. And so I got my license in 2019 and have loved it. It's great. I work a lot, but I can also go skiing with my kids every Friday this year. So it's perfect.
All right. And I don't know if you know this, but I actually had Kimberly Darr on my Inner Edison podcast about her life and her business and all that stuff. And the same reason she got into real estate was because what she did was the fact that no matter what you did, everybody made the same, right? No matter what. And that's the same with me. When I got out of the Navy, I couldn't stand being in the military because no matter how hard I worked, I got paid the same as everybody else. And somebody who's been in a year longer than me could tell me what to do, just even though they were dumber than me. Yep. And so that's what's great about this. And I myself personally, I love helping people build personal wealth through home ownership. It's so important. I've seen so many of my people I've helped grow over time their house or the next house they buy, another house they buy. And it's just amazing their network that they grow for their family. And that's so important. And I think everybody should own a home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I chose not to buy in 2018, and then you have to own your business for 2 years. So I'm going to be a first-time home buyer this year, hopefully. So I'm pretty excited about that because I'm ready. I wasn't ready in 2018, which was fine. But now with the way the market went, I sure wish I had.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, hindsight's always 20/20.
Always.
Kristy, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right. So everybody, thanks for listening. And if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And Kristy, stay right there. And thanks again. And we'll talk to you. We'll be here next Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. And then this Saturday at 12 noon, you can listen to us on the radio. Thanks, Kristy. Stay right there.
Thanks, Ed.